Jacinda Ardern, 5 minutes.
I think it's been quite uplifting to hear members across the House talk with such passion about the importance of protecting important historic and heritage buildings in New Zealand, and specifically within the Christchurch context. I think that's incredibly important given the loss that that city and that region has experienced in terms of its heritage buildings, and I do want to come back to that in a little bit. Speaking though directly to the Arts Centre, I too, like many other members across this House, visited the centre both before and post the quakes. Post the quakes, I was left with absolutely no doubt about the passion that is held by those who are working on this project to do the very best job they can on behalf of the people of Canterbury to preserve such an important cluster of buildings. There is, however, a few issues that relate to the Arts Centre. Obviously, it was the home of the University of Canterbury for more than a century. It comprises of 23 heritage buildings. They are collectively registered as Category 1 historic places under the Heritage New Zealand Act, and of course with such a significant number of buildings, it is a large project. It's 7 years, it's 290 million. The definition around the buildings, though, that has been used struck a little bit of controversy at the Select Committee, and to be fair, very few things, I think, did raise any question marks. But one submission actually two of the submissions did raise concerns about references in the bill to historic stone buildings, which of course is the majority, as I understand, of the buildings, but that does leave out, as currently drafted, protections for the former Student Union building, which would be known to many as Dux Deluxe and has been referred to in a number of speeches in this House. Now, whilst I understand the issue over the protections not relating to that building has been raised with those who are members of the Arts Centre Trust, they have said that the plans aren't really locked in for that building, as I understand it, as has been reported, and that there is still a longer term plan around that building that needs to be developed. Given that this particular part of the centre's grounds has not been included in the definition, I think it would be helpful if the Trust were able to give words of comfort, particularly to those from the Historic Places Canterbury, who have spoken out about this issue and are really seeking assurances that it is part of the wider plan. So look, even though it isn't included in the definition by virtue of being a brick and wood building as opposed to a stone building, I think there is room for the Trust to work collaboratively with those advocates who are trying to ensure that that building is looked after too. Those were just one of the points that I wanted to make. I do also want to just touch on the fact that that provision is being made in the bill for legacy around the Trust. If the Trust is wound up, the Trust property would be vested in the Crown. I think that's a really important part of the bill. Of course, we would hope that we wouldn't have a set of circumstances that would allow that, but I have seen cases in the past where there hasn't been proper provision for that, and it has led to disastrous results. Speaking of disastrous results, Mr. Speaker, I want to only spend just a quick part of my contribution on the wider issues around heritage buildings in Canterbury. There have been 1,240 demolitions as of February 2015 within the 4 avenues compared to 292 rebuild consents. 20% of those are being heritage buildings. The centre of Christchurch has lost 50% of its heritage buildings, and often that happened at great haste and in some cases without it being necessary. And the Majestic is a prime example of that. Labor almost a year ago to the day called for Section 38 of this SERA Act to no longer be applied to heritage buildings, to give proper RMA process to the removal of heritage buildings. Yes, safety was a very necessary concern in the beginning, But that moment had moved on, and we were seeing time and time again decisions of expediency at the cost of heritage. Mr. Speaker, I would hope that there is an end to that process now in Christchurch.
I call Joe Hayes.